Yeah. Good morning. Back a little bit. All right. Good morning, everybody. We are here, and today we are doing appraisals and comps in an inclining market. So we'll start off with market updates. If you guys have any questions, put it in the little chat bar on the right-hand side of the video broadcast so I can address them while we're going at this. All right, so it seems to be the same trend. This is a 3-day, the last 3 days, what's been going on. Solds are at 366 and new listings 447. So we're slowly catching up with new inventory. We seem to be putting it in escrow. So hopefully a slowdown. I think the interest rates are still bouncing between that 3 and 3.5% interest rate. So it should be a lively market still. All right, today I wanted to address a few things. Let's see if I can get my phone connected here. Let's start off by running comps on properties and what appraisers are looking for. So on your comps, we want to select, we want to know what's active, what's coming soon, what's under contract, and what's sold. They should auto prompt a range for you under sold. It's going to be the last 6 months there, last 180 days, and then everything that's under contract. So quickest way to do it is there we go. So rule of thumb on comps is 1 mile. If you have a lot, then you want to shrink that from 1 mile to half mile and quarter mile until you come up with the most recent comps. So what appraisers are doing, we're just going to use the office address. Durango, there it is, it should auto-populate. And I've got a 1 mile radius, and I'm going to comp right now the simplest of numbers. People like to put in bedrooms, bathrooms, but what you want to do is you want to look at the square footage of the building. So the square footage of the building is going to be, for government-backed loans, 10% up, 10% down. So say we're trying to comp a 2,000 square foot house within the vicinity of the office here. So we're going to put in 1,800. 1800. 2, 10% up is going to be 2,200. Okay. And it gave us 59 matches. Let's see it right here. So we know for the fact that it's going to be a house, so we want to do single family. And let's see what it shrinks to, 48. So let's check it out on the map. There it is, 1 mile around. And say we know it's within a certain subdivision, so we can actually so the 1 mile is going to be generally in the restriction of what an appraiser is allowed to use. Now they'll probably shrink it down if we know exactly that it's in this subdivision and try to pinpoint those comps within that center, especially if they're within a 3-month sales period. So you want to look at that. So that's our mapping. Let's go to results. And I always like to put the sales at the top. So on mine, which is Corey default, it's pretty similar to agent default, but I added a few extra things like list price per square foot, sales price per square foot. Might be an agent comp or whatever. So then at that point, you want to reach the, pick out which comps you want to use. Like if it's a 2-story, you want to take out your 1-stories and use 2 stories. If it's no pool, make sure you have a bunch of no pools. So right now we've got a range of like 380 to 400. I got 387, 397. So we know for a fact, just looking at it, that the property is going to be at about that 400 range or upper 300 range. And that's how we get a little bit closer on comping those. So that's what your appraiser is going to look for. We jump into a few things, and we'll look at an actual appraisal. But there's a couple things I want everybody to keep in mind when we're talking with appraisers. Quick comps, anybody have questions on quick comps? You should be running those before you're writing offers on properties, just to understand what it looks like. This. All right. So appraisals, inclining market. Okay, a couple things to remember. Appraisers are human, and then we'll go into looking at appraisal. They are doing basically the same thing that we're doing. We're going in the MLS. We are trying to justify a value. I know it's a bit ridiculous when people are bidding 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I think I talked to somebody, it was 150,000 above appraisal. Yeah, I think it was it had a view of the city and a golf course, but 150,000 is how drastic I've heard bids go up to so far. So these guys are just trying to figure out where we're coming from, because we're the ones writing these offers, right? We're the agents, we're the people, we're the ones on the ground, and then when we submit these, ridiculous contracts to the bank, their job is to come in and justify how we wrote it, or if we're way off in how we wrote it, okay? So that the client basically isn't getting ripped off. So that they're like a reasonable head. If we're out there running around writing 10 offers and then they're getting ridiculous in their numbers, they're supposed to be the level head that's supposed to help us bring us back to normal, right? All right. So does the property have added value? So like looking at that comp where we had that range from 380 to 400, we're looking at similar properties, right? Kind of like this beach. What's the added value? So now if you're saying, well, we had to write the offer at 420, what's the added value to the property, and can it be justified in the appraisal? So what are we looking for on that? We went through comparables. We have the individual, and then we have the sales around it, which keeps our market in balance. All right, upward adjustments. So if we're seeing a trend, and you'll see this in a declining market also, so if you see a trend with each sale, so as our inventory is low and another property in the subdivision comes on and sells between 5 to 8% higher, okay? If we can show the rate of increase over the last 6 months was consistent, then we can justify bringing that 400 up above the $400,000 mark, if that was our ceiling cap on the comps for the area. So if it's 387 to 400 and it went from 360 to 387 over the last 6 months, then we justify that that's a growing adjustment. But we can't do that unless we can show the trend to the appraiser, and the appraiser has to agree. Okay. It's the same in the declining. If you see values drop, they're going to say 5% adjustment down or 3% adjustment down. Same with right now, they'll have adjustments up, and we'll run through that on the appraisal sheet so that you guys can see that. All right, offers. If you're listing properties and you guys have multiple offers, these are like gifts to you guys. They're presents. Okay, so keep them. Don't say, okay, hey, the seller's declining your offer, put it away. Store it in an offer folder in your property folder. Reason being is when it comes to appraisal time, and we've done this before on a couple of properties here at the office, is we'll take the front page and say, hey, we've had 6 offers that they were all similar in this range, especially if the comps are at 400 and our top offer was 420,000. If we can show that we had offers at 410, 415, 418, and we create a little book for the appraiser will take that and say, hey, let's bring those values up. Because what a value of a property is what a seller is willing to pay, what a buyer is willing to pay and what a seller is willing to sell for. That's a property value. And that's never going to change. So if you have offers, keep them, look them up, just take the front page, create a little book, and leave it there for the appraiser. They'll appreciate any help that's given to them because they're probably doing 15, 20 appraisals a week, where they got to go to the property, they got to take pictures, they got to measure, and then they have to have it all turned in within 7 days. So they have a full-time job. That's why they get paid $6 these appraisal companies. So if you can help them out, help them out. Don't nag them. We're not even really supposed to be talking to them, but if you've done the research and the work that can help them, go ahead and share that information just to help them bring those values in. Okay. Everything included. So what I mean by that is what's included with that sale. What are they giving to you with that property? Solar panels, one to look for. Your tankless water heaters, one to look for. Washer, dryers, refrigerators. We added a smart home addendum for Wi-Fi thermostats, which are really expensive. Camera systems, Nest, what's the other? Rings, the other one I always hear walking around. Everybody's Ring cams going off. We have the smart home addendums on that, so that does help increase value. But we need to have them labeled in addendums, and those addendums turned in. So the appraisers get the full contract, and they're supposed to get that smart home addendum, but a lot of them don't know how to use that one yet because it's pretty new. In fact, I've had to write several addendums on properties to show that these items were included to bring the value up. So addendums will help. Just make sure it's part of the contract and it goes to the appraiser. That way you guys aren't backtracking and rewriting things that are included with the sale. So it just helps on the appraisal as it gets done. And then they'll make adjustments according to how it works. Let's take a look at an appraisal real quick. I'm going to show you guys one that I got adjusted to. I got adjusted up $30,000 after the appraisal came back. Just doing these quick techniques, because I usually give it to the appraiser and just let them take it. Factoring in that they'll do what they're supposed to be doing. But this one was a kind of a crazy one. Let's see if I can find it. All right, so all right, so here's a house that it was April. I think we did this in April, and the appraisal was done in March, and the original value that was given to us was $540,000, which is what it was listed for. And when we got the appraisal back, I had to run through and see what the appraiser was doing. Okay. Have you guys looked at an appraisal yet? No? Yeah, it counts. So you understand how it was written with the comparables and all that? Yeah, somewhat. Okay. So right off the bat, they're going to give you what's on the contract. This is what's handed to them. And whether they reviewed the pages or whatnot. So right off the bat, they reviewed it. The contract price was $575. Is the property seller on a record? Yes. And then is there any contributions, down payment assistance, and then no financial assistance provided. So they'll give you that right off the bat. And I always jump to page 2. Because that's going to be your comparables. So when I pulled that 1 mile radius, they're going to label it here. There are 29 comparables within the past 12 months ranging. We're of course looking at 6 months because the market's moving fast. So we want to keep them below 6 months. And then they gave us a range of 375 to 635. That's a pretty big range, right? And then they're going to pick out the most comparable property, which would be the most recent sale and homes in the neighborhood. Okay. So this one's on the same street, Joshua Peak. That one makes sense, right? This one's in the same subdivision. It is, I believe it is the same matching square footage, so it's almost a model match. But that one sold for $635. This one was a bit smaller, so he adjusted up here. And then you see this adjustment up here from the October sale. So from October to March, he adjusted up $29,000 on the 484. That's what I'm talking about when market adjustments. So they increased that price $29,000, and then they're increasing it for the lack of square footage of the $26,000. Okay. This one they used comparable 3, and here are his adjustments. This one being gated, so so that's a adjustment. And the condition of the property adjusted $15,000, and then you took off $10,000 for the square footage, the difference between 3487 and 3280, to give us net adjusted prices. So what they're doing is they're trying to come up with a reasonable range between 635, 484, and 565. Pretty big range for this property, right? So here's all the adjustments, and then here's the gross adjustments. So you got them all to within the same range: 544, 539, and a 540. So they gave this back to me, and it said, indicated by sales comparison, $540,000. So they gave me $540,000, but my contract price is $575. Me as a realtor, I'm not happy, right? Because I did my research. I know that there's value to this. So I go back to the lender and say, hey, something's wrong here. Well, what is wrong? This is why you have to read it. And here's the discrepancy that I found. That from energy efficient items, he did not disclose the owned solar panels. So we were adjusted down $30,000, right? And that should be adjusted because in the contract and in the smart home addendum that I turned in, I labeled that the solar panels were to be paid in full and transferred to the buyer. So just those 2 pages and a little bit of hard work and pressure. Here's my adjustment. So I think it took us several weeks to get it done, and 4 addendums, writing the same thing, that solar panels be paid, and researching that the solar panels can be paid and transferred without any encumbrances. The appraiser came back, readjusted the solar panels, and just took the pool off because there was no pool. And now we got the value up to $570. So now the borrower's got to come up with less money than what we wrote it for on the property. Any questions? Okay. So the other thing is you're always going to get this at the bottom on the reconciliation port. It's going to be appraisal is made as is, or it's subject to something. Okay. And this is subject to the following repairs or alterations, hypothetical conditions. And they're going to list out what the reason is to bring that value in. And so this one they're going to write in here. So you always want to look at this page, the bottom of page 2, when it gives you the value. If it's as is, that means you guys don't have to do anything. If it's subject to something, like FHA, you'll see a lot, hey, subject to straps going in or a door being fixed. They'll put those conditions right here. That has to be done prior to closing. Subject to solar panels being owned. So we just had to correct that at title. make sure that the lien was paid off and transferred off to the owner. Okay, but you'll see other conditions in there. If you'll see it in VA, FHA type loans, they'll put conditions that something needs to be completed prior to that value coming in, especially if they made adjustments for you. You'll see that right here on this bottom part. Now, who gets the appraisal? Agents don't get the appraisal, right? Unless something bad is wrong. It's the buyer paid for the appraisal, so it's the buyer's appraisal and the lender. It's between the buyer and the lender. Unless they need us to step in, that's when usually you'll get a copy of the appraisal. And it's like, hey, help us out here. We can't bring the value in. Can you look at this appraisal and let me know what you think? Okay, and that's where we come in as professionals, and we have to go in and check the adjustments and make sure they were done correctly or if they can be fixed. I've gone through some that have been where they wouldn't fix them. So no, this is the value, this is the value, and then you have to deal with it in other ways. But that, my friends, is the appraisal. So if you go through it, they even give you the phone number for the appraiser once you get a copy of it, who the appraiser was being done for, and then your second set of comparables. So sometimes if you come in and look at these, sometimes they're better comps and sometimes they're not. Usually the secondary comps aren't going to be as good as the first three. So your secondary ones, go in and double check, because if you say, hey, comp 4 or 5 is better than comp 3, can you use that one? They may be able to push that up to bring in a better indicated value than comp 1, 2, or 3. So make sure you double look at them. Like I said, these ones, this is where we noticed the red flag on the appraisal was the $30,000 adjustments. Well, this is the one that is after it's fixed, and they put the $30,000 adjustments on the secondary comps, which brought the values up closer to the 570, knowing that the solar panels work for it. And sometimes they'll have like a $200,000 backyard. You ever seen those Oasises that are, $250,000 backyard, and you have to make those adjustments on the comps because somebody could have the same $400,000 house but put $250,000 in the backyard. It's going to be a different property. Okay. All right. No questions. And then 7. They're kind of long and boring, but I highly suggest if you get your hands on an appraisal, get knowledgeable on it as soon as possible, because you're never going to get away from appraisals. And it's easier to talk to appraisers when you know what form they're looking for. What's the name of this form? Appraisal form something. Anyways, on the back of the appraisal should be pictures of the property and the comparable properties. So you'll get, this is their job, is to go out and measure the building to make sure it's accurate versus just going off of what we do, which is go off the MLS or tax forms. They actually have to go out and measure. We used to have to do that, but then now that we're synced up with tax records and county building sketches, I don't see as many realtors spending the time measuring. We used to take out laser guns and measure each wall. You still can. Nobody will give you any slack for it. Plus, it's good showmanship for selling. All right, dimensions, list, and then it should roll. Here's pictures of the property. So they have to go out and show that they went out to the property and took pictures of the property. Streets. Like, even when I go do evaluations, I actually find myself taking pictures down the street so I remember what the street looks like. So, not a bad thing to do when you're doing your evaluations. Take pictures, show those bathrooms, show what's in the garage, the tankless water heaters, water softeners, show that water's running so that you know the house was in working order. Gated, so that they could comp it with gated properties and show the lender. And then pictures of the comparables that were around it, which is like when we contracted this one was a pending sale for $635. So the only thing that I subtracted on it was pool, because it had solar panels like this property, and it was the same exact property. So I actually had this property valued closer to the $600,000 range when we were advising the client to bid from 540 to 575. I think we said, hey, we're safe to 575. And we were able to make the adjustments because we went in ahead of time using pending sales that were coming. And for pending sales, if you guys get out there and start working, you'll see who the agents are at the bottom of those pending sales. Feel free to call them. Most of them will help you out. Like if you called me and said, hey, you're the pending agent on 123 Apple Street, can you help me out and let me know if you're close to list price, or you know where you guys are ending up? Did you get the appraisal done? That's a great tool that people don't use, but if you did, it will help you guys navigate those a lot. So at the very bottom of a pending sale, it tells you who the buyer agent is and gives you their phone number, so you can call them and see how far along they are, and you can use those pending sales. And I believe we did that on that one. And they were getting close to list price. So I just, like I said, subtracted the pool, and I had this one valued closer to $600,000. Because it's always tough when you have something similar that's way down low or somewhere close in the middle. And the appraiser had a hard time too, because they had newer homes around the corner, selling at the 540 range. So those are the conversations we had to have with the appraiser. So if you guys have issues with appraisals, and you want me to run through the appraisal with you and get an opinion, just let me know, and we'll run through it just like we're doing now, and see if we can make any adjustments, or if we can go and ask for reconciliation with the lender. The lender might say, yeah, let's take it back to the appraiser and see if we can adjust the price. I think Cheryl had one last month that had 15 offers on it, and we knew it wasn't going to appraise, so we took the front page of every offer and submitted that with that we had run, and the appraiser actually brought it in just $5,000 under the contract price. So the buyer was ecstatic. But that's on a listing side. We helped the buyer out. The buyer agent had no idea how to do it. So if you can tackle it head on, it just makes the transaction a lot smoother. And in the end, all we're trying to do is connect a buyer with the property and make sure that the seller can sell the property, right? It's simple as that. So if we can get out ahead of the game and educate us, it helps navigate these frustrations that normally happen. All right, and they give pictures of where it's at, and there should be one of the comparables. There they are. And which comparables they use and the locations, so that the lender can see that they were used right around the property. And then, of course, their appraiser certificate looks like your real estate license, but it says appraiser, and then tax records. It's an MLS sheet. But I did find that and then their comp sheet, when they ran the whole entire 6 months. Any questions on running comps and how to read this appraiser's work? Slightly different, but it's the same thing that we're doing when we run comps on it. Can you go to an appraiser and ask for adjustments? No, not really. But you can go to the lender, and the lender can contact the appraiser. Even though the appraiser's phone number is on the back of the sheet, usually you'll get a secretary or something like that, because they'll screen to make sure realtors aren't calling, yelling at an appraiser. So the proper channels are to go through the buyer's lawyer and say, hey, I may have things that may adjust this appraisal. And like I said, appraisers aren't robots, they're human. They do make mistakes, and they will fix them and acknowledge them. Some will, some won't. Some are just, no, I'm on a high horse, and this is the value that I'm giving you guys. So sometimes you have to stick with it, but there's other ways that you guys can navigate. But for the most part, they are fixable if there is a mistake on an appraisal. Okay. The best type of appraisal is a VA, because if it doesn't come in and match your purchase agreement, the appraiser calls Tidewater, which means, hey, you reach out to me and help me. That way, that means that you can actually communicate directly with the appraiser. And when they call Tidewater, all they're doing is asking for help. Like, hey, how did you get to this 575? I'm not getting there. Do you know something that I don't know? Is your contract different from the contract that I'm reading? Type of scenario. So then you guys can get together and try to work out that number. They'll generally, though, on Tidewater, they're going to reach out to the buyer agent, and they're going to reach out to the listing agent, because they want to know how the two agencies come up with that value. Yeah, and if it's just a plain, well, the buyer wanted to pay $50,000 more for the property, and he's coming out cash, then they'll probably just leave the appraisal the way it is, because there's a lot of that going on. Ridiculous amounts of money. Okay. I think that's it. I was expecting more questions on comps and appraisals. So, do you guys have any other questions? How's the market treating you guys? Navigating it? Busy?
A little late because I came in the listing I have.
Cool.
So they're kind of moving out late though. So I'm supposed to be first day actually listing is tomorrow.
Okay.
So I don't have pictures yet to put on there because.
So you can extend that. Just MLS change order.
Okay.
Start date to be X, and then. Yeah.
So is it okay if I just switch that date over, or just leave it there without photos and get the photos in maybe Tuesday?
So the rule is if you want it in the MLS, so it's being broadcasted, you just need a picture of the front.
Okay, so for now, just get a picture.
Yeah, just take one with your phone, put it in there, and then wait. And you can just put in agent to agent, professional photos coming in 5 to 6 days. Yeah, whenever it's coming. But the rule is as long as you have one picture, and that's the same rule for coming soon listings too.
This is a coming soon.
Yeah, so coming soon listings you can't have in there without one picture of the front.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they'll flag you, and you'll get an email that says, hey, you're in violation type of scenario.
Okay.
But as long as you have one picture of the front, you're good to go. And it can be coming soon for 30 days, up to 30 days. But good. Where's that? Anything good? Where's it? What's the price range?
It's we're listing at 335. And
335?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to sell pretty quick. That's a pretty good price range.
It's a 3-bedroom, 2-story house. It's a little tiny backyard with a little yard,
Yeah.
2-car garage. It's kind of like on Warm Springs in Durango area.
1,600 square feet?
A little below 15.
15?
Yeah, but the house looks spacious, and we walk in, it's like one of those houses that are kind of squared off, a little bigger, So it's nice. I think it'll sell. All appliances are staying. All still
good. It's a good starter.
A ring doorbell, everything's staying. So granite countertops, espresso plate.
Where's your seller going?
Arizona.
Okay. So they have a destination. That seems to be the question. Like, where are you going after you sell this property?
Right. No, I was on that too, but I was like, we need someone up there, like, we can be
Yeah.
more appropriate, so,
Yeah, that's always the best.
So hopefully after they get this house sold and get jobs going out there, when they want to buy,
Cool. Very good. Inventory, anybody feel inventory shortage still?
Yeah.
I'm not feeling there's a shortage. I think that if you strike out week 1, usually like Monday of week 2, there's a whole another 3 or 4 to choose from.
Oh yeah, no.
That's what I feel.
There is some.
What gets bought gets sold pretty quick. So it's just kind of like if you're working with buyers, you kind of have to like every week check it and make sure it's going. If you have them on auto drips, usually they're like messaging you, hey, let's do this. But I noticed that what goes away one week, it's there the next week. So that's kind of, I keep the clients calm about it. It's like, yeah, we'll just go look next week. There'll be like 2 or 3 more next week.
So like the rental market's hot, right? So if I wanted to post my house for rent, like I usually have it for 1,500. I can put it to like 17, or is that too much?
I don't know. I run the comps on it.
There's no comps around it.
Really? Even for how long?
Since 2000, beginning 2020, and then the end of 2019.
There's not anything even within a mile?
No.
That's rented?
Not like matches it.
Similar?
No, because it's a community. So mine's a community that has HOA. The other ones around it don't have HOA.
I would try it.
They're a little bit bigger.
I would say try it and see. But it's like, for this listing we had, I had to give the client rentals to look at. And for where they were looking at, I was expecting 25, but 75 popped up along this west and northwest L up to Centennial. I was expecting like 25 homes for what she wanted, 2,300 square feet, under 2,300 a month or something like that. I wasn't expecting as many, but it was like 75 homes that popped up. So I did notice that increase last week when I pulled that for rentals starting back up.
Oh, yeah. It'll start up back in July? When
I don't know.
evictions start?
Because then I'm noticing more inventory from, remember the ones we couldn't show because tenants were in them? I'm noticing those are showing key any vacant now. So, they're finally moving out and now they're added inventory. So I don't know. I hope it mellows out. The interest rates up a little bit might help us a little bit, but it's not as doom and gloom as it was like February and March, where you're like, are you kidding me? Like 40,000, 50,000, 150,000. I heard that story from May. Somebody bid 150,000 above. Yeah, I don't think it's back to fair trading. I overpriced a listing last week just because they're not in a hurry to move 3 to 60 days. So, but they had a realistic understanding that, hey, we might have to adjust the price down.
Right.
So, very cool. Any questions from anybody watching? Put them in the chat bar now, or I'm logging out. Questions here. All right, we're just watching in the background. All right, that's all I've got. I say go get them approved. I still think there's plenty of action out here for everybody with selling 5,000 homes a month out of 19,000 realtors. That's still pretty good. So again, that goes with the top 20% doing most of the work and the bottom 80 sitting around doing nothing. So go to work. In the stream. Wait. Anybody watching too, give me feedback because I got a new camera. Hopefully that microphone's better. It's like a 4K one, so hopefully the screen's a little bit better too. Let me know. I'm trying to make things better. All right, everybody have a good week. Making sales. June, July, August are hot months. And I mean hot by lots of sales. So jump in there and do it. All right, you guys know where to find me.